Welcome into a special edition of the Northwest Student Media Tailgate Show. As we're here to set the playoff action between Northwest Missouri State and Grand Valley State. Grand Valley State will be the 3 seed. Northwest will come in as the 6 seed. I'm Jacob Blair. Joining me is Kramer Sansone and Nolan Brooks. It's time to go play some playoff football. Northwest makes another playoff run this year. They're going to try to work through. They're going to have a little bit of a long road being that 6 seed, though.
I think they're used to it, though. I know last year they come in, I think as well as the 6th possibly. I can't remember that far back. But I know they lost in the first round. And this is something that they're going to try to overcome with this game being in the first round. Another road game, so they're going to be a road dog. They're going to be a road dog throughout this playoffs as well. And it's going to be a great test to see what Braden Wright does with this offense as the freshman quarterback leading this team already and doing it in the first round of the playoffs. And Michigan is going to be tough.
Yeah, I agree. The weather's going to be another factor. But I've been to a few practices over the past 2 weeks, and they've really been preaching, get used to the weather. It's nothing new. It's cold here in Maryville already, so by the time you get up to Michigan, it's going to be cold, and you got to be ready for it. I've talked to Chama Pierre, and he's really preached to me that the coaches are really, really hounding them on making sure that their hands are taken care of, their feet are taken care of, and that they know that it's going to be a test, and Grand Valley is coming to play, whether it's snowing or it's sunny and 60. So hopefully the Bearcats are ready, and Grand Valley's definitely going to show up.
And last week when Northwest had to go to Warrensburg to play Central Missouri, they ended up with a 48-21 win. Started that game 48-0 through 3 quarters. So you look at this offense, they really were able to pick things back up after a struggling game with Fort Hays. They get back on track with Central Missouri, and they're going to take some momentum into the playoffs.
As for that game, too, they actually got the running game going a lot with Josh Caldwell. And Braden Wright actually had over 200 yards throwing, as he's usually been accustomed to throughout this season. But looking at Josh Caldwell's 183 yards, that is ridiculous for running back for Northwest. I haven't seen a running back do that at all this season. And it was good to get against the Mules and give them a win to end out the rest of the regular season.
Yeah, they played great football. I think that was the Bearcat team that needed to show up against Hayes. Obviously, that didn't happen. But it was nice to see them really come out and play a good team game overall. The defense really showed up. Whole bunch of sacks, holding Kyle Bradley for UCM to 115 yards passing. That's a great defensive game overall. And like you said, Kramer, 206 all-purpose yards by Josh Caldwell. You can't really ask for much more from a running back. And then another 236 yards from Braden Wright. That's a great offensive game, and that's really hard to stop. Granted, they can't give up those 21 points there at the end of the game in every game because not every team is going to just stop at that 21. They're going to try and fight. And hopefully the Bearcat defense is ready for Grand Valley because Grand Valley's got a very high-powered offense, and we'll see what happens.
As the performance from Caldwell was good enough to get him MIAA Player of the Week. And we were able to hear a little bit from Josh Caldwell as he talked about the offensive performance against UCM.
I'm not going to say we added another element. I feel like, we've always had that element. I think we just stepped it up a notch. Like I said, our offensive line has been playing well all season, but we just want to challenge them to play the best game they played so far. We haven't got a chance to look at the film, evaluate film from yesterday's game yet. But I take it they played pretty well, which is great because, Michigan in the playoffs, you go up to those colder states, the teams that can run the ball, the teams that can stop the run, are the teams that usually have a good chance of winning. So it's definitely going to be a point of emphasis this week.
So Josh Caldwell, again, able to put in that really good performance against UCM as he got some new things working there for this offense, as now they go to play Grand Valley State. A lot of history between these two teams as they've been in a lot of big games in the past. It's been a while since they've matched up, but they got a big one this weekend.
And thinking about big games, this is ones that stands out the most historical-wise. But if you just want to even go back into the regular season for Northwest, the big games that they've it was supposed to be a big game, but it kind of went one-sided as you look at the Pitt State game, honestly, as it's 31-7. That's a big game in the MIAA conference. This is the big game coming into the playoffs. This is going to be one of the bigger games for these Bearcats, but they already have had that taste of winning one of the big crucial games that you need to win, and this is going to probably prevail on Saturday to see what Northwest has the capability of doing.
Yeah, I agree. Northwest has really been tested in a few of the games as well. You know, they lost to Fort Hays where they were tested. They were tested by Nebraska Kearney. So, you know, when you have those conference games where they're tested, it really shows you that this Northwest team is vulnerable in some areas, but they've definitely worked on that throughout the season, and they proved that in the UCM game. Grand Valley has definitely had their test this season. You know, they only won 20-17 against a 5-3 Ashland team. So that's something that Grand Valley obviously, you know, capitalized on and won 48-21 the very next week and showed out just like Northwest did. You know, they lose a game or they win a closer game, and then they come out and they have a big game offensively and defensively. So it's definitely going to be a big match between some offensive and defensive juggernauts overall, and we'll see what happens.
And when you look at Grand Valley State, a couple matchups they've had with other teams that make the playoffs. The first game of the season, they played Indianapolis, won that one 30-7. Indianapolis will be the 4 seed in the playoffs, and then the 2 seed is Ferris State. That's the only loss Grand Valley State has had all year long, as they lost that one 35-31. So this is an extremely tough football team. But again, you talk about the history between these two teams. They played a lot. They played in the 2005 National Championship game. Grand Valley took that one. The 2006 National Championship game as well. And then the 2007 season, they played in the semifinals. Northwest got that one back. And then in 2009, they played in the National Championship again. Northwest got that one. And then in 2013, they played in the semifinals. So, again, a lot of big-time matchups between these two teams. But it's been a while since they've matched up, and that's going to create for these players and coaches know the history between these two teams, but no one's really lived it.
As I really like the history coming into this game, and I know things have changed, programs have changed, a lot has changed. The play style for both teams have changed considerably, and the way that stands out the most is what this Northwest offense I like the most for is this offense. This offense is a little bit potent, and whenever it's on, it's on.
I sat down with our running back, Isaiah Strayhorn, this week, and he preached to me after I asked him, you know, does this history between the teams really affect how you guys are going to prepare overall? And, I mean, he was very straightforward and told me no. I mean, you're going to have history no matter what between a team, and you really just got to look past that. You got to prepare for them because every year it's a new team. And obviously Grand Valley is much different from who they were, 6-7 years ago. So you really got to prepare differently, and I'm sure that in the practices they're focusing on what Grand Valley does on defense. In some of the drills I saw, they were watching film and they talked about how the defensive ends for Grand Valley really attack on the line, and they were preparing how to block for that, how to run and avoid that in their passes, and it's definitely going to be a fight to the finish between these two teams.
And Coach Rich Wright was also able to sit down and have a couple comments about this Grand Valley team and the history between the two of them. So here's Coach Rich Wright on the history of these two teams.
The thing that was so strange to me, and I guess that's part of being here for 15 seasons, is it never dawned on me that, none of these guys have ever played against Grand Valley State. For all the epic games we've had over the years, to kind of renew that is exciting. And we've never been up there, and so we'll just talk a little bit about the history of the game and, kind of what's been at stake. And, it's fun to talk about, but let's face it. It's 2018. We have a whole new group of kids. And
so, again, it's a historic rivalry between these two teams, but it's a postseason rivalry. They don't really ever meet up in the regular season. So, again, Kramer, it's a big matchup. It's the playoffs. You win or you go home, and both teams have that on their mind this weekend.
And obviously you don't want to lose. That's the number one thing that these teams are going to bring into this game is fight till the horn goes off around the scoreboard or when the whistles blow from the refs. Seniors from both sides still playing to the factor. I know we mentioned this during senior day that these want to keep winning. Seniors now want to be the last team to say, hey, we won this game. We won the playoffs. We won the entire D2 championship. And right now, what both teams need to go in thinking is keep fighting. I know some team, one of the sides is not going to perform well. The other may perform well. Who knows? Both sides may not perform well at all through what's possible conditions for the weather-wise. Just make sure they finish the games both strong and both healthy.
Yeah, definitely. These teams are very high-powered on both sides of the ball, and that's something that is definitely going to affect the score of the game. You know, sometimes you have a high-powered offense versus a high-powered defense, but both teams are coming in with both sides of the ball rather strong, and that's going to create for a low-scoring game, I feel like. You know, when you have two quarterbacks that can throw for a bunch of yards and two running backs that can run all over a defense, that's going to affect how much a team succeeds on the field. And, you know, with so many different matchups between these teams in the playoffs, it's something that the teams are preparing for. You know, you're going to have this juggernaut team who knows how to play in the playoffs and is prepared for the playoffs every single year. And hopefully both teams have watched the film, gotten it down that it's a juggernaut against a juggernaut, and we'll see what happens.
And we haven't explicitly expressed the records of these teams yet, because really those don't matter anymore. Northwest is 9-2, Grand Valley 10-1, but it's the playoff time. If Northwest wins, they move on. Grand Valley wins, they move on. The other team, their season is done. And the interesting thing about this matchup is will be in Allendale, Michigan, so Northwest is going to have to take a long trip up there. Last year they went and played Ashland in Ohio, so they've got a little bit, some of the older guys have that experience from last year where they struggled a little bit when that playoff game. This weekend, though, you're going to look at, there's a possibility that weather will play a factor in this game.
Just give a little quick weather analysis that I have been doing on the Tailgate shows this past that had history.
Kramer Sansone, the
meteorologist over here.
Yes.
So in Allendale, Michigan, it's supposed to start snowing tonight, and it's not going to stop until Saturday night. There is AM snow showers on Saturday morning, and a little bit of a chance. It's supposed to be 36 degrees, so it's going to be snowy. I mean, wouldn't be surprised if they bring out the snow blowers or the clean off to make sure you see those yard markers throughout the game. So, I mean, they're prepared for it. And the only thing with this weather conditions is stay healthy, stay warm. I mean, there's probably going to be heaters out by the benches, and hopefully there's heaters out by the benches so they can stay warm. And, the hand warmers, you might want to use those.
Yeah, definitely. Something that benefited Northwest really was that it did snow down here in Maryville this past week, so they got to go out during the practice. You know, they didn't put them inside. They wanted them to experience it, that the ball is going to be slick, the field is going to be slick, and you got to be prepared for aspects of the game like that. And I know both players on both sides of the field are preparing for that. You know, defenses in the drills that I saw at practice were trying to make sure their footing was just perfect so that when they come off the corner for a rush that they don't slip, and that the offensive linemen, when they back up to block, they also don't slip and give up a rush. And hopefully both teams know that weather is always going to be a factor when you get this late into the year. It's starting to snow, get cold, so both teams are definitely going to have to be prepared for that.
And cold weather always seems to affect the passing game more than anything. And on Tuesday, Braden Wright was named the MIAA Freshman of the Year, so congratulations to Braden. But you got a young quarterback that's going to be playing in his first playoff game. It might be cold, it might be snowy. Braden Wright's going to have a challenge this weekend.
And I want to see this challenge. I really do. I want to see how well he performs under pressure, because at times he has performed very well. And if you want to go back to the Emporia State game, it really wasn't that pretty for both sides anyways. And I just want to see him be out there in the snow, have some fun, get over those 200 yards that he usually does a week, and possibly win this game for the Bearcats.
Yeah, this young quarterback situation that Northwest has is something that they really need to take advantage of. Obviously, they don't want to lose, but this is a building experience for Braden Wright, and I know I preach how much I've been to their practices, but every day in practice that I've seen, they are chewing him out for mistakes he's made, and that they needed him to improve and become an overall quarterback that can lead a team despite his age. You know, they chose him for a reason, and to be a freshman and have that leadership role obviously is a lot of pressure in your first playoff game, but I think he's ready for it. This program, like we've been talking about, has a lot of history in the playoffs, and I'm sure they prepared him mentally and physically for the playoffs, so he's not afraid as a freshman to go in and lead.
Yeah, so again, Grand Valley State will be hosting Northwest in the 3 and 6 matchup in the playoffs. We'll go ahead and take a quick break here from the Northwest Missouri State Student Media Tailgate Show. When we get back, we're going to dive into a little bit more comparisons between these two teams.
Bearcat Outdoors is a show that captures the memories that are made with family and friends while enjoying everything the outdoors has to offer. We will be in pursuit of a variety of game and sharing the experiences along the way. Check it out Monday through Thursday at 6:50 on KNWT Channel 8. Also, don't forget to follow along on all our social media for full access of everything Channel 8 has to offer.
Welcome back into the Northwest Missouri State University Student Tailgate Show. Jacob Blair, Kramer Sansone, Nolan Brooks with you. Is now we're gonna dive into the comparisons between these two teams, Grand Valley State and Northwest Missouri State University. The main thing to start with is these two offenses. When you look at the two teams on the offensive end, very similar in total yards per game. 433 for Grand Valley State, 430 for the Bearcats. Rushing yards per game, give the advantage to the Bearcats on that one. 208 rushing yards per game. Grand Valley State only with 163. Passing yards is where it shifts in favor of Grand Valley. They have 269 passing yards per game, only 222 for the Bearcats. And then points per game wise, the Bearcats are scoring about 37.5 with Grand Valley at 34. So Kramer, when we look at the two offenses, very similar, high-powered offenses statistics-wise, but when you look at the two stats, the one that stands out is Grand Valley. They like to pass the football, and they like to do that a lot.
Yeah, and to be honest with that passing scheme that they do have, their quarterback's not that mobile, and that's, I feel like, the only reason why Northwest has more of that rushing yards per game, because instead of using two players that they use, Northwest has three people, including Braden Wright. And with that passing, Braden's not that far behind Williams, and he has the capability of matching that, honestly, because Bart Williams for Grand Valley has 244 throwing yards a game, and I know Braden's just behind that, and it's just more of a similar type of competition that they do have on the offensive side.
Yeah, I think this quarterback situation is something that the Northwest defense is going to have to exploit. Since Grand Valley's quarterback is primarily a pocket-based quarterback, not on the run, it's something that where you can pressure the ball and lead to less passing yards per game. He is throwing quite a bit of yards per game. I mean, 244 yards per game is no small task, and I think that's something that Grand Valley is going to really bring to the table and try to use to their advantage. Northwest running game, however, is better than Grand Valley, so I think Northwest is going to have to really use both of their offensive, and if they're going to win this game, that both of those are going to have to get going very, very quickly, score a lot of points quickly, or they're not going to keep up in this game, because Grand Valley is a very high-scoring offense, and it's hard to catch back up once you're down by enough. So,
and then we'll turn and look at the defensive comparisons as well between these two teams, and that's where Northwest has the advantage. If Grand Valley's better on offense, Northwest a little bit better on defense. As yards per game, 328 for Grand Valley, only 267 for Northwest, but the rushing yards per game is where Northwest has been stout all season long, only 66 rush yards per game. Grand Valley at 140 rush yards per game. Points or passing yards per game, that's where Northwest has struggled this season, over 200 yards there, under 200 yards for Grand Valley, and then points per game wise, 17 for Grand Valley, 13 for Northwest. So when we talk about and look at the defensive statistics, Northwest, they struggle defensively in the passing game, and that's where Grand Valley succeeds. So looking at that, to me, that might be the key matchup is going to be the Northwest pass defense versus the Grand Valley pass offense.
And when you also look at those passing yards per game giving up, it's only 18 yards by either side. But I know Northwest has a history of not doing so well in the passing game, and that is something that they're going to exploit. But the only thing that could possibly kind of put a trump card in there is the weather. And if it's snowing at the game time and throughout the game time, they're going to run the ball a lot more. And with Northwest giving up only 66 yards per game compared to that 139 by Grand Valley, I mean, it's starting to shift a little bit to one side than the other. And one of the huge things on this is the points per games allowed. And 13 for Northwest and 17 for Grand Valley. That's really good for both sides.
And you mentioned that I think weather would be the key aspect. If there is weather in this football game, you kind of swing that advantage to Northwest. That'll benefit them a little bit more because it'll slow down that Grand Valley offense.
Yeah, definitely. We've seen it before where the weather has affected a game to where it's purely run-based, and I think the Northwest defense really, like Kramer said, needs to exploit that if there is snow coming down at game time. And something that the Northwest defense has done a great job of, despite the 200 passing yards a game, is their D-line is playing great football this year. You know, Austin Eskew, first-team All-MIAA honors this year. They're really pressuring the quarterback, and they're getting a lot of sacks, and they're allowing the secondary for Northwest to not have to work as much as for covering the receivers because they're already pressuring the quarterback, forcing little dump down passes or short slant plays and things like that, and really preventing the home run ball. Because if you look at the Hayes game, there were not a lot of home run passes by Hayes. It was a lot of dump down passes where they had good blocking and they would pick up the first downs, and when you give those up, obviously they add up. So
something to add on that too is if they do more of the running game, they're going to have to make sure the transfers are clean. And one of the things that Northwest hasn't done that much is take the snap under center. Braden, throughout the season, has had a little bit of some miscues on snaps. He has fumbled a few times. And this is something that they have to control throughout this game because your hands are going to be cold. They're going to be in the snow. If you're not wearing gloves, your fingers going to feel like they have frostbite on which they don't. It's just going to be a very tough time for both the quarterbacks on transfers-wise.
And this might not be an apples-to-apples type comparison, but last week at the Spoof Hound football game, the high school here in Maryville, they put the ball on the ground 7 times. There was snow on the ground, and it was cold, and they struggled to hang on to the football. A lot of those miscues were on handoffs. That's when the ball ended up on the ground. So although it's comparing high school to college, it's that same effect. If the ball's a little bit harder, it's a little bit harder to hang on when it's cold and wet out.
And I don't want to like say that the handoff's going to be compared to one team or the other, but the way with the Grand Valley and their way that their running game goes, they have taken the ball snapped under center, so they know how to do that transfer clean there. But the only other is the other transfer to the running back. That's the big key right there. You can get it to your quarterback just fine, but you got to get it to your running back in order to get the ball up the field.
Yeah, it's something that you see stressed a lot for any team at any level. You know, that the trust and that fluidity to transfer the ball from quarterback to running back. And I know a drill that is seen practiced a lot is putting the ball right in the middle of the chest of the running back versus, directly in their hands. Put it into their chest plate up in the front and make sure that they hold on to it. Now, something that Northwest does a lot is they run a lot of option plays. So Braden Wright is going to have to do a better job of being able to read the defense and make sure that when you do transfer and you don't hand it off or you do hand it off, that you make the right read and you're able to keep running with the ball and you don't drop it because you aren't paying attention to where the running back's going or where the defense is. So that's something Northwest is going to have to work on. Grand Valley, I feel like since they're a lot more under center, they're not going to have to worry about a option type offense, and hopefully that works out to the Northwest defense advantage.
Yes, now we've spent a little bit of time breaking down the Grand Valley Northwest game. Coach Rich Wright obviously has done the same thing, but he gave us a couple comments on how he sees the Grand Valley attack.
There's pieces of them that compare to lots of people that we've played against, a little bit of Hayes, a little bit of Central. They run the ball pretty consistently. I think they're averaging 160 some odd yards a game rushing, but they throw it well too. they do a great job throwing vertical balls. Their quarterback is a prototypical pocket passer. He's got a big arm. He can make all the throws. He does a nice job of throwing away from coverage, probably as good as anybody we've seen in the last couple of years. And so, and a talented group of receivers. So they've got a well-rounded football team. They're a spread attack, so they're similar, but what they feature and what they do are just slightly different. On the other side of the ball, they're going to play a lot of man coverage. They're going to press up. They're going to challenge at the line of scrimmage. They're going to put 6 people in the box, and they're going to try and fly around and play physical for 60.
So, again, it's an interesting matchup, this 3-6 matchup to start the first round of the playoffs. It's going to be a good one. Right now, you might give the hand to Grand Valley as they have had the better season thus far. Northwest has had some struggles, but if Northwest comes and plays their best football game, they're going to be in this, and it's going to be a good game.
I'm excited to see what the final stat line is, what the final score is. I will be tuning on to the Bearcat Radio Network, listening to it, and I'm just ready. I really hope Northwest can pull through and keep going, be those road dogs throughout these playoffs, and hopefully they do it all healthy and safe.
Yeah, I really look forward to this matchup as well. You know, you have 2 juggernaut playoff teams meeting yet again, and that's really the kind of game you want to see in the playoffs. You don't want to see a high-powered offense come out and smack the 6th seed and run away with that game and keep moving on. So I don't think that's going to happen in this game. Northwest defense is going to shut down the Grand Valley offense, but the Grand Valley team is really going to come to play, and this is going to be no easy task. We'll see what happens, and hopefully the Bearcats come out on top.
And now it's time to look at the rest of the region in terms of how the playoffs sit and where all these games will be occurring. Is the 1 seed is Ouachita Baptist. They will get a first-round bye, so they await the winner of Indianapolis and Fort Hays State. That game will take place at 12 p.m. East or 12 p.m. Central Time as when that game will occur. The number 2 seed will be Ferris State. They take on Harding. That game will also be at noon Central Time, and then the one we're talking about, Grand Valley at the 3 seed, Northwest at the 6 seed. That's a noon o'clock start time. That'll be on the Bearcat Radio Network, as well as be able to watch that one live, I believe, on ESPN3. The winner of Grand Valley State Northwest, they will meet the winner of Ferris State and Harding, and then it'll be Ouachita Baptist meeting the winner of Indianapolis and Fort Hays State. So it's interesting how everything came out at the end of the season and how these matchups line up, not only this week, but moving forward in this region.
And going into this, right now, it's everybody's 0-0 going into the playoffs. And you got to be on a skew, though, because everybody has all this regular season, but you got to win in the postseason. You may have a great record coming into it, but you have to win.
Yeah, this region isn't as strong as some of the other regions, but something to point out, there's 2 MIAA teams in this region. We've preached all season long how the MIAA is a strong conference, and yet again, here we see 1 or 2 MIAA teams in this region, and it's good to see that it's equally represented. You know, you have these high-powered teams like Ouachita Baptist and Ferris State and Grand Valley, and it really shows that the MIAA is just as strong as these teams come out of their respected conferences. So it's going to be a fun playoff. There's plenty of high-powered offenses throughout the entire bracket, and we'll see who comes out on top.
In Northwest, they struggled a little bit in last year's playoff matchup. They're going to take a similar travel, a long travel to get to their opponent. Coach Rich Wright talked about how they can hopefully avoid what happened last year.
This is a different football team. I think we're more explosive on offense. I think we're more balanced on offense. I think defensively we're playing pretty well. I just want, and I told the kids this, I want to go to Grand Valley State, and I want to play to win. I want to be aggressive. I want to hold nothing back. And we'll let those chips fall wherever they may. The thing I can live with mistakes. I can live with getting beat. What I can't live with is being hesitant. And I just want to go play. If we play our best game and get beat, I'm great with it. But I want to go get after it, be on the attack. Absolutely embrace the underdog role, because we don't get to be in that role very often.
So again, Northwest, they're going to be making a long trek up to Allendale, Michigan to take on Grand Valley State. As we wind down the Northwest Student Media Tailgate Show, Kramer, what are your final thoughts heading into this matchup?
hold on to the ball, stay warm, make sure that running game starts off strong. If you get the ball at the beginning of the game, like not the beginning, like if you get to receive it from the kickoff, you better score. You need to score first, and you need to score often. This is Grand Valley is a team that's not going to let up. They are going to score points on you, and you have to stay ahead of the game.
Yeah, I agree with that fully. Something I want to pull out for my final thought is that if the Northwest defense is going to hang around and they're going to keep this game close, you got to pressure that pocket-based quarterback. You got to force him to make dump-down passes to allow for your linebackers and your DBs to come off of their man and make those key tackles to force a 3-and-out and really exploit that offensive weakness that Grand Valley might have. Force them to run the ball. Northwest has a great run defense for a reason, and like Kramer said, if it's cold out and they have to run the ball, really attack that weakness and make sure that Grand Valley can exploit your defense by passing the ball and really stop the run, and I feel like that's how Northwest could win this game.
I feel like with Northwest, it's a little bit backwards from the normal ideas. You want to stop the pass before you stop the run and force Grand Valley to run the football, and then Northwest would have the advantage at that point. That'll wrap everything up for the Northwest Student Media Tailgate Show. We thank you for tuning in. Again, you can catch the game at noon on the Bearcat Radio Network as well as on ESPN3. For Nolan Brooks, Kramer Sansone, I'm Jacob Blair. Thank you for tuning in to Northwest Student Media Tailgate Show.